Hi, I'm Randa LB, Assistant Professor in the Department of Education, Special Education at the University of St. Joseph in Connecticut. Today I'm going to talk about analyzing art to learn history. So when we're looking at images, we think whether or not these images are primary sources. So you can clearly tell the difference between these two images. One of them is pretty or fun to look at, and the other one, it shows us what the real world looks like. Further, to identify primary sources, we need to answer the following questions about the source. Who created the material and why? When was it created? And where was it created? So, some types of photos are called stock photos. Stock photos are generic photographs, usually using paid models. Many, if not most, of the modern photographs in your social studies textbook, particularly those showing people, are stock photos. They are not primary sources. On the other hand, another type of photos is historic photographs. So, most large educational publishers get their historic photographs and other images, such as engravings and drawings, from vendors. And these stock photo houses sell photographs created by professional photographers. Sometimes the image vendor provides the publisher with detailed information about the image, and sometimes it doesn't. Historic artwork, including paintings and drawings and engravings, are often gathered from stock houses or centralized archives. Some of these images are primary sources created by people who witnessed an event, but some are not. So if we look at the picture on the left, it's about students carrying picket signs as part of a citywide school boycott that saw hundreds of thousands of children stay home from classes. This was posted in the New York Times on February 3rd, 1964. So you can look at the information inside the photograph to try to tell what it was about. And also the one on the right, it is a photograph that we see over and over again in the media. It's taken for Martin Luther King when he gave his speech. So those are called historic photographs. On the other hand, there are commissioned illustrations, and those are photographs that are found in social studies textbooks, but they are commissioned. So the publishers describe the picture they want to an artist contracted for the job. Then the artist creates an illustration that meets that description. Often, artists will do a great deal of research and create images that are historically accurate as possible, but they are not primary sources. The one on the right is taken from a gospel band on their tour. The one on the left is an illustration of Queen Elizabeth knighting Sir Francis Drake on board of the Golden Hind at Deptford, London, in April 4th, 1581. So captions tell us a lot of information about the image or the source. For instance, they tell us what is the subject of the image, when was the image created, where was the image created, who created it, and in what was it originally published. All of this information is in the example here on the screen. With the growing importance of visual literacy and use of primary sources in the classroom, more attention is being paid to captions in social studies textbooks and material. So when we're looking at sources, we want to identify primary and secondary sources. But whether you're looking at materials in your textbook or researching primary sources, the first thing you need to do is make sure you know what you're looking at. This is the foundation for all the other work to come. So you can start by deciding if it is a primary source or a secondary source. So an example of a primary source is the one on the left, the Bill of Rights. It's a primary source because it's original. It's first-hand account of an event or a time period. It's written during or close to the time of the event, original creative writing or works of art, and primary sources also are factual, not analysis or interpretation. On the other hand, if you look at the various examples on the right, you're going to find that secondary sources from the name, they are secondary, so they are not first, right? And so it could be an analysis or interpretation of a primary source. It's a second-hand account of an event. It could be an interpretation of a creative work, sometimes reliable and sometimes not. It could be also potentially biased. So an example of a primary source here is this artwork, The Man Who Walked Between the Towers. So what is the purpose and the audience here? Who are the intended audience? Those are questions we need to ask about primary sources. It's very important to look for bias in the work, whether it's in a photograph in a textbook or whether it's an artwork. We need to look for bias. What is bias exactly? Bias, it's a strong inclination of the mind or a preconceived opinion about something or someone. A bias may be favorable or unfavorable, so it could be in favor of or against an idea. Sometimes people use the word prejudice to mean the same thing. So a person prefers an idea and possibly does not give equal chance to a different idea or different person. So that's a bias. When we're looking at the image here, what do we see? Is there bias in this picture? So an important question to ask to identify bias is, what does this picture, how does it make you feel? And what does the caption say? It says 961 dash eyes de happiest little coon in the cotton field. So this is information about a boy in the cotton field. Could this boy be a slave? Could this boy be a child working in the field? Why would the child be happy? Or was there bias in the selection of the picture and together with the caption? So these are questions that we need to ask when we're looking for bias in a source. Another way in which bias is really evident in the way that a photograph can be changed by editing the effects of the photograph by either by lighting it differently or by adding or eliminating content. So the upper ones are clearly there is a figure up there that is missing in the other photograph. So there's like eliminating content, adding content, and then the lower one really depicts a photograph that has been edited based on the different lighting effects. And what does the different lighting, how does it make us feel? Similarly, those two pictures depict the child labor in 1910, but clearly both of them represent a different reality of what it is like to be a child working in a factory or working during 1910. So there is bias here because due to like the picture taken, there is a bias, and also probably where it was presented and how it was, captioned. It is definitely there to deliver certain message to a certain audience. So we need to still do some research to understand everything about an artwork. So research means finding out more about the object you're looking at. So some questions, for instance, about this photo's caption says the Great Hall at Ellis Island, circa 1912, where immigrants underwent medical and legal examinations before immigration officers. NPS Statue of Liberty, NM. So some questions we might ask here are, where is Ellis Island? Where in Ellis Island was this picture taken? What countries did these immigrants originate from? What was the process of immigrating to the United States during this time in history? But what are some questions you would ask yourself about the picture as well? So essentially, we're trying to ask the W questions, which are who, what, when, where, and why. And does the surrounding, text, caption, or attribution answer all of the W questions I just asked? And if not, then it's time for us to do some research. Sometimes students actually use the internet to do research. It's easier that way. When researching on the internet, it's important to use good online database and effective search terms. Okay? So now that we are done with the workshop, it is time to practice. So this slide is available on Google Docs, and I gave you the link. Try to work together in groups to answer these questions that are listed here. Thank you very much for watching the video, and have a wonderful learning experience.